The levels of hype and optimism at Ferrari were off the scale going into the season. They ended last year with so much momentum fighting for the Constructors' title all the way up to Abu Dhabi, finishing at P2 in the end, just 14 points behind McLaren, which, when you think about the circumstances that McLaren had a championship-level car from Miami onwards, that means that Ferrari did a brilliant job at the end of the season. However, 2025 presented unique circumstances because, unlike in 24 where McLaren were able to develop the car until the end of the season to help Lando fight for the championship, a good start was going to be absolutely crucial in 25 because at some point this season, the teams are going to have to cut off their development for 2026. The start of the season was going to be make or break for the likes of Russell in the Mercedes, Verstappen in the Red Bull, both of the McLaren drivers, and also both of the Ferrari drivers if they wanted to fight for the driver's title. McLaren stepped up and took control of the championship from very early on in the season, whilst Ferrari could not have had a worse start to the season during the most crucial moments of the season as well. The first few races for Ferrari were, to be honest, a bit of an embarrassment. In Australia, Leclerc finished in 8th and Hamilton in 10th after a strategical howler by the team. Then they had a double technical disqualification in the Chinese Grand Prix, and Ferrari's only highlights so far have been a sprint win in China and only 3 podiums for Leclerc. They are currently 3rd in the Constructors' Championship, only 16 points behind Mercedes, and whilst on paper that might not look like a disaster, in reality Ferrari are being made to look better than they actually are. Mercedes and Red Bull have unbalanced driver lineups which aren't yet scoring the points that they should be. Antonelli is a 17-year-old rookie, and we all know the struggles of the second Red Bull drivers to even score consistent points, let alone even get close to podiums. Whilst when it comes to Ferrari, they are similar to McLaren in having 2 top drivers who have proven that they can all win races, and yet despite having that baked-in advantage of a better driver lineup, they are barely able to compete with the likes of Mercedes and Red Bull. Ferrari's results have been superficially made to look better when in reality, even though I'm sure that Ferrari is going to win some races this season and maybe even finish 2nd in the constructors behind McLaren, the truth is that 2025 is already a failure. In the last decade, McLaren have gone from being an embarrassment at the back of the grid to a dominant force in 2025, whilst in less than half that time, Ferrari, with all of the money and resources, after the momentum of finishing strong last year and after 4 years in the ground effect era, have still failed to develop a consistent and reliable race-winning car to start a season. Ferrari revealed that in June they have taken the SF25 out of the wind tunnel indefinitely to make way for the development of their 26 car, and whilst that doesn't mean that they won't continue to bring upgrades onto the SF25 because there has already been upgrades that have been in the pipeline for weeks that are still to come, it does mean that they just don't see the value in continuing to chase anything major this season, and their focus and attention is now primarily going to be shifting on the development of the 2026 car with the brand new aero and power unit regulations. That basically means that the competitiveness of their car is very soon going to be locked in at some point for the rest of the season, and it is not going to get any better. Unsurprisingly, with Ferrari, you can definitely look back at their history and kind of predict what's going to happen in the future. Whenever the results are poor, the pressure and scrutiny from specifically the Italian media is just immediately ramped up, and they always try to find a person to focus that pressure onto, whether it's the drivers or team members. Going into Canada, the Italian media chose to put Vasseur under pressure with reports that he could be dropped. Now, Frederic Vasseur has a 3-year contract which obviously began in 2023 and which ends at the end of this season. So whilst technically he wouldn't be fired at the end of the season, there is a possibility that they just simply choose not to re-sign him. The strange thing is that his potential rumoured replacements are people like Christian Horner, which to me is just absolutely ridiculous because I could not imagine a bigger personality clash than Horner, Leclerc and Hamilton, but then also Antonello Coletta, who is Ferrari's Le Mans winning team principal, and they are at the moment the 2 frontrunners to replace Vasseur. And now this story is as old as time when it comes to Ferrari, because whether these reports are based on real feelings from upper management or whether they're just total speculation, what's going on is that they're trying to find a scapegoat. Now, this has been happening for well over a decade, and since 2014, Ferrari have had Domenicali, Mattiacci, Arrivabene, Binotto and Vasseur as their team principals. The pressure on Fred, however, is not totally without justification. Vasseur has got to take responsibility and accountability as the leader. The technical team is not maximizing their potential and using McLaren as the blueprint. Under Andrea Stella, McLaren, since he became team principal, actually haven't made that many massive hires. The major signings were already there. Stella just reorganized the structure and put the people in the right places to get the most out of them, and he totally revolutionized McLaren's technical structure. That is the pressure that's going to be on Vasseur to essentially do the same with the people that are already there. Driver criticism has also been present throughout Ferrari's history, and I've also been a part of it on my channel. I was very critical of Seb in 2018 and 2019 for making too many mistakes and for not getting the most out of what I thought was a potential title challenging car in 2018, and I was even a little bit critical of Leclerc for being too crash prone around 2022 and 2023. Since then, however, I rank Leclerc as the second best driver on the grid, better than Piastri, Norris, Hamilton and Russell right now. Random rumors have also started to be leaked about Leclerc potentially going to Mercedes, and the drivers to me are not the problem at Ferrari at the moment. In the past, they have succumbed to the pressure, which in part has been because the team has put them under so much pressure through their incompetence, and at that point, both the team and the drivers rightly deserved their criticism. However, this feels like all of these rumors about Vasseur potentially leaving and Leclerc potentially leaving are being used to divide the team and potentially even test the team from within to see if there's any weak links that are about to break. When it comes to Lewis, whilst there was loads of hype going into the season, and understandably so, whilst I do think that Lewis's start has been underwhelming given that it is the worst start in his career with no podiums in the first 10 races, I also think that his underwhelming start has been slightly over-exaggerated by some people in terms of how bad it really has been compared to Leclerc. In terms of the championship, they are right next to each other, with Leclerc in 5th and Hamilton in 6th. In terms of their average qualifying position, they are also right next to each other, with Leclerc in 5th and Hamilton in 6th, with Leclerc averaging a starting position of exactly 6 and Hamilton 7.5, and according to the race, Hamilton's average qualifying deficit compared to Leclerc is just over a 10.5, which is almost identical to Norris's gap to Piastri and better than Sainz's gap compared to Alex Albon. The comparison to Carlos, I think, is a very good one because he did an exceptional job at Ferrari up against Leclerc, and in terms of the percentage of points that he scored compared to Leclerc, in 2024, Charles Leclerc scored 54.6% of the team's total points, with Sainz scoring 44.5%. Now in 2025, in the races that we have had so far, Leclerc has scored 56.8%, with Hamilton 43.2%. Looking at all of those numbers, whilst there is no doubt that Lewis's start to Ferrari has been underwhelming, statistically, he's basically picked up exactly where Sainz left off. The team, in terms of performance so far, are no better or worse with Lewis over Carlos. To me, that speaks volumes about the issues which, again, in my opinion, have nothing to do with the drivers. In fact, in 2025, all of the established and experienced drivers who have moved teams this season, and that's Hamilton, Sainz, and you can also throw in Tsunoda into that mix as well, are actually all struggling a lot more than I think we expected compared to their established teammates. Cars have become so specialized and are so much more difficult to adapt to that Sainz is actually underperforming more relative to Albon than Hamilton is relative to Leclerc. I think it's also worth mentioning that when you are changing teams and stepping into a team that already has a very experienced and established driver, it is a lot easier to have a good start at your brand new team when the car and the team is actually on an upward trajectory. At the end of the day, it is all about optics and what's actually reality. Sainz's underwhelming start doesn't look that bad because the car has actually been pretty good and Williams as a team has improved compared to last year. In contrast at Ferrari, Hamilton's underwhelming start has been exaggerated a little bit more because the car has been bad, meaning Lewis immediately was put in a tougher position, and then the team as a whole has regressed compared to last year. The poor performances have now started to put extra emphasis, extra pressure, and an even bigger spotlight on the operational side of Ferrari, and this is where they've started to show cracks and have started to make mistakes. Although their pit stops have actually been relatively good compared to the likes of McLaren and Red Bull, they have started to be indecisive on the strategy side, and there's been too many moments of loss of concentration and bad communication from the pit wall, like when Lewis wasn't told about Max being on a hot lap in Monaco, which led to his grid penalty. And now I think it's worth saying that it's very easy to be overdramatic and almost exaggerate just how bad Ferrari are at the moment, because there is no doubt that they're nowhere near as dysfunctional as they were in 2022 under Binotto. However, Vasseur is starting to lose the improvements that he made joining the team. The media scrutiny in Italy just feeds on Ferrari's weakness, which is only going to add and continue to add more pressure onto the team as the season continues. 2025 is now a complete write-off regardless of how many wins they get, and Vasseur's contract renewal is going to be a major decision. He is negotiating from a position of weakness. However, Leclerc and Hamilton have been very firm supporters of Vasseur, especially in Canada, and it's clear that those three have absolute trust in each other. Vasseur in 2025 has got to start showing some kind of tangible progress for next season, because at the moment Ferrari is just repeating history all over again and continuing their historic cycle of under-delivering, which leads to media pressure, which leads to someone getting scapegoated, which then leads to endless optimism, and then it just restarts all over again when they continue to under-deliver. Well, there you have it. Don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed this video and want to support the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.